più tra i farfalloni amoroso, notte e giorno di torno girano, delle belle turbando al riposo, ma ci s'è tuato cibo d'amore.
Hey everybody, Chico and Poppy show here with Poppy. Today I am going to make sirloin tips, and I know a lot of people, they hear that and they say, oh god, I can't make that, that's really hard. I have a recipe here that's very easy. It's very easy to prep. It's one of these meals here that you can prep ahead of time, and then when you're ready to put it in the oven, you put it in the oven. It's going to take about 3 hours in the oven. Low and slow is the best way to get real tender sirloin here. But we're going to be able to prep this and get this in the oven, I'm figuring in about 10 minutes. It's fairly easy. We have a pound of fresh mushrooms that I've sliced. Try not to slice them. I do this ahead of time so you guys don't have to watch all this, but try not to slice them super thin. You want to taste that mushroom. So if you see here, you know, I make them a little bit on the thicker side, and I have 16 ounces of that. I have one large onion that I've done in slices here, you can see. And then I cut them in half again because I don't want to have long strips. I kind of cut them in half. And then I have about 2 pounds here of sirloin steak. And I've already trimmed it. Try to get a good portion of the fat off. I leave a little bit on there like that. Okay, and then we're going to use a cup of red wine, a cup of beef broth, and a cup of heavy cream. Very easy recipe to remember. It's all 3 of them are 1 cup each. And then we give it a little bit of the Worcestershire here, and a little sweet spicy mustard. We give it a little shot of both of those just to give it a little kick. Okay, we're going to start with the meat here. Let me get some oil. Of course, I always tell you, I always use 100% olive oil. But we're going to start with the meat, and I just want to give the meat a little bit of flavor and a little binding ingredient here. So I'm going to put a little bit of flour here on the meat. We're not going to kill it with flour. We're going to just give it a little tiny bit so that when the juices get into this, it'll have a little bit of a thickening agent. I don't want my sirloin tips to be super thick. It's very little bit on the flour. And then a little bit of fresh black pepper for Chico. And of course, like I tell you, I don't use the salt. Okay, so we're going to put some olive oil here in the pan.
I'm done with my homework.
You're all done with your homework? And we're going to brown up this meat. We're not cooking it completely like you're going to eat it. We're going to just brown it up. Okay? It's going to be 3-4 minutes probably on each side. In here, we're going to brown this up. Looks like this could use a little bit more pepper on it. We're going to brown this. Put it in the pan. Like I tell you, with other recipes that we do, it's all about layers. So we're going to start with the sirloin, put it in a pan, and then we're going to go with the mushrooms, cook them off, put them in a pan, go with the onions. It's all going to be in layers. No different than any of the other meals I do. You can see here, we're not going to cook this to death, but I want to give it a little color. You won't get color. When you do these low and slow meals, you don't get color on anything unless you do it ahead of time. And what's going to be really good is this pan, when we get all done and we start to do our juice, this pan is going to have loads of flavor in it, and we're going to get everything off of the pan with flavor. I don't know how good you can see this, but it's starting to brown up nice now. Smells great. We haven't made this in a while, and everybody's excited that we're going to do this. But if you're going to do it, you got to give yourself a few hours, because the best way to do a pot roast, a sirloin tips, is low and slow. If you do it at 350 and try to do it in an hour or two, your meat you can't get it tender enough. You're just going to mess it up. So you want to give yourself, I always like to have 3 hours, maybe like at 250. I'm going to do this one today at 275 and maybe try to cut down a little bit. But ideally, it would be 3 hours at 250. And if you could go 4, that'd be even better yet. Low and slow. And you can see this meat, see how it's starting to brown up now? This is just about ready. Okay? Like I said, we're not cooking it to death to eat it. We're just going to brown it a little bit. You can see the type of pan I have here. This is going to be deep enough. You don't want to go with a thin pan because all your juices will evaporate. Okay? So we're going to add this. Move the meat out of the way. Add a little bit of oil again. And let's do our mushrooms. Now I told you I've sliced these and I didn't want to do them too thin. And I also cleaned them. And you don't want to clean these in the sink with water, because what people don't realize is the mushroom is loaded with water already. You don't know it, but it's in there. So if you do that, you'll kind of ruin the mushrooms and they get waterlogged. So what you do is you just wipe them off. Here, you get a nice clean rag and you'll wipe off the little bit of dirt that's on them. And that's clean enough. Okay? And what I like to do here, help break this down, is you add a little bit of pepper, and I will add just a little bit of salt to the mushroom, because that'll help break this down and to cook it. Okay? Get all the oil on there. And we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to brown these up a little bit, but we're not going to cook them to death. Okay? The pan keeps getting dried out because all the water that's in these mushrooms are evaporating. Get it all coated good. When we get this done, we're going to add it in there. We're going to add those mushrooms, and then we'll put all of our liquids in here, and this is going to be ready to go in the oven. It's very, very easy recipe. When I first met Mercy, I mean, all my cooking is basically Italian, but when I first met Mercy, I didn't do a lot of beef. And she loves the steak and the pot roasts and all the different the sirloin tips and stuff like that. And I didn't do a lot of it. But because I know how much she liked it, I started doing it, and I've just gotten better and better at it. And then what I've always done is I'll try somebody else's recipe, and I'll do it to the T. Every step I'll do exactly the way they say. And then when I get done, I'll say, oh, that was a little bit too dry, or that could have used a little more of this or a little more of that. So then you change somebody else's recipe. Or sometimes you'll try someone's recipe and you'll hate it completely, and you'll try somebody else's or somebody, and all of a sudden you'll find a recipe that's halfway decent. And then you just have to modify it to make it your own. And that's what I've done here, and that's what I've done with the pot roast and stuff like that. You should try other people's. You find out what's good, what's bad, what your family likes, because it's different. Everybody's family is different. This is a cream base, and I've never liked cream bases, but I like this one. Now what's starting to happen here is the liquid is all coming out of those mushrooms right now. And what's happening is it looks like I have all oil in there, and it's not. It's all the water coming out. So we're going to leave this alone and let that evaporate just a little bit, because we don't want to boil these mushrooms. We want them to get brown. And the only way that's going to happen is to not add any more oil and to wait until that liquid dries up a little bit and we can brown these mushrooms. So it might take us a couple more minutes here before we can get that to evaporate. It's starting to now. You got to have the right size pan. You don't want to be cooking this in a little dinky little tiny pan. And the same thing I've told you in other recipes is you can modify these recipes a little bit, but you don't want to get rid of the basic parts of the recipe. Like for example, I've told you that this gets a cup of beef broth. Now I've told you before, I just don't like bouillon cubes. They're not strong enough. They're extremely weak. And what you want is you want flavor. You want people, like this is so good, you'll want to drink the broth. It's so good when we get done. And if you use like a bouillon, Bob called for 1 cup of beef broth, and then you put 1 bouillon cube in the water, you're not going to get that flavor. And I've told you before, if you can't make your own base, buy a real good base. Now these are bases that I used when I had the restaurant, and it's the real deal. It's like homemade bases, real strong, thick. And you add this to hot water, and you'll get yourself. You see how dark this is? You'll get yourself a beautiful base. And I'm telling you, that's what's going to make your recipe different than somebody else's. that get that flavor. These little things is all what makes a difference. My grandmother used to say, cook with love. You know, she always showed how she loved somebody by her cooking. And that's what it's all about. You do that little bit extra because you love the people you're cooking for. And you want them to like that. And that's how you show your love. In the Italian families, you show your love by cooking. And doing the little extra things that makes your meal better than somebody else's. Because you put a little bit extra in there. You put a little extra love into it. And that's what makes the difference. I could use a bouillon cube, but you're not going to get the, you know, my family deserves to have that flavor that I want them to have. And it means spending a little more. Something like this, you want to spend a little more on that. Olive oil, you want to spend a little more on the olive oil. Little things like that. This calls for red wine. You can use regular cooking wine. That's fine. You don't need anything fancy for that. But you don't want to cut the corners on the basic parts of these recipes that I'm giving you. You can modify them a little bit, but don't change the basic things from the beef base and the olive oils and stuff like this. Now I'm using a pumice olive oil for this, which is 100% olive oil, but it's the opposite end of extra virgin. You got the one end of extra virgin, which is the first part, and the pumice is the last part, but it's still 100%. And I like that. It's nice and strong, and I like that flavor in the olive oil. Now you can see that the water is coming out of these mushrooms now, so this is pretty much done. You can see it's starting to brown up. You got to give it a little bit of time, like I said, to get that water to come out of those mushrooms, because otherwise they're just going to be all, you know, soaked with water. You don't realize it when you see a dry mushroom, but they're loaded with water. Okay, so we got the first layer of the meat. Second layer is going to be the mushrooms. And remember what I said is going to be the third? The onions, right? Okay, we can mix this up a little bit. Once again, here comes our next layer. We're going to add the olive oil. And we're going to add these onions. I told you that I sliced them. So they're going to be long strips. And then I cut that strip in half. To my family, they're not crazy in love with the onions. So I don't want them to have super long ones. I cut them in half a little bit for them. These onions won't take long at all to cook. Got an end piece there. I'm going to just cut that a little bit more. You see how long this isn't taking long at all, right? We're going to finish these onions and the cooking part's done, and we're going to just use this pan to put our liquids in here. And then it's ready to go in the oven. I'm telling you, it's very, very easy. I made this recipe super easy. And the great part about filming these now is that it's getting preserved. You know, if somebody else in the family wants to make this, they don't have to call me up and ask me. You know, what happens, these recipes get handed down, but we never write them down. You know, so this is going to be good. All right, see how these onions are already browning already? Add a little more olive oil. You just want to brown them. If you took everything and just threw it in the pan and then threw it in the oven, you'd have a sirloin tips, but you wouldn't get that flavor from browning this all up. And then each thing that we're browning is getting the flavor from the other, whatever we did ahead of time before that. You see, so it's just giving a little bit of love to your stuff. Alright, these onions are just about ready. See, we're getting a little color on them, and they're going to be ready. So we can come over here now and get the onions off of the pan, and then we're going to do our liquids, okay? And this pan is loaded with flavor right now. Alright, what I'm going to do is let's stir this up a little bit. So now we got the meat in here, we got the mushrooms, and we got the onions. Isn't that beautiful? It smells great. Alright, so we're going to start. Let's take our 1 cup of wine. Alright, we'll put this in first. You want to cook that wine down a little bit just so that you get rid of the alcohol, and you'll get a different flavor as well once this is cooked down a little bit. Okay, I still got the pan on high, but this pan has been on high the whole time. And that's fine to do as long as you're watching it. You know, you don't want to be cooking like this on highs like I do if you're planning on walking away at all. All right, so we got the wine in there. Now we're going to take this beef broth. I told you, very strong. It's a very strong beef broth. I already told you that. We're going to add this to it. So we got a cup and a cup. Very easy to remember. And then I have a cup of heavy cream. This is 8 ounces right here. We're going to add the whole thing. All right. We're going to give it a little shot of the Worcestershire. You can say that 5 times fast. I would say probably a tablespoon. I do the Italian measurements. And the same thing here. This is about a tablespoon as well of a spicy mustard. And guys, that's it. We're going to stir this up. We're going to get this hot. We're going to add it. And we are done for about 3 hours for this to cook. I'm going to add a couple spices to it. But nothing crazy. Smells great. Smells wonderful. And I'm telling you, it makes a difference on that base. I can't say it enough. Don't use a bouillon cube. I fight with my mother all the time about that because she always used the bouillons. And she says, oh, I made it, but I just don't get the same flavor you have. And there, it's right there. Right there with that base. It's all about the base. About the base. I find myself saying the same stuff over and over, but it's very important. Alright, this is about ready. I mean, we don't have to cook this to death here. I just want to get some of that alcohol to get out of that wine. Okay, let's move everything out of the way. When we get all done and everything is done, I'm going to do egg noodles underneath, and just like I did in the restaurants, I'm going to cook the egg noodles ahead of time, and this is going to be so hot when it comes out that you can put it right right over the egg noodles. You're not going to have to reheat it. So I'm going to be doing that as well. I'm going to probably make two packages, but this recipe only calls for like 1 package of the egg noodles. Okay, so this broth is ready. There you go. Tell me that's not an easy recipe I got. Super easy. Hey, and it's one recipe that I don't say put garlic in. So that's a bonus. Alright, now I'm going to stir this up a little bit so it all gets incorporated. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a little bit of Italian seasoning. Let's not go nuts because it doesn't need too much. We're going to just add a little bit. Let's say tablespoon. Looks about right. And I have some great parsley here I like to add. We're going to add a little bit of parsley there. And guys, that's it. Close it up good. $250 for about 3 hours. It's going to be excellent.
3 hours later.
Okay, everybody, sirloin tips here, ready to come out. Been about 3 hours. Alright. Like I said, the secret about this is low and slow. 3 hours, about 250. There we have it. Alright, so like I always say, you cook the noodles ahead of time. They do not need to be heated up again, really, because this is so hot, it's going to reheat these noodles here. Here I got the egg noodles. What I like to do is to use the slotted one here, and we can get all the good stuff. You got mushrooms, onions, and of course that sirloin, which is going to be as tender as can be. There, like that. You get that on there. Then we get the juice, and I swear to you, you're going to want to drink this juice. It's so good. plenty of juice, and that's why there's so much in here. I told you, you got a cup of each. A cup of wine, a cup of beef broth, heavy cream. There you have it. Sirloin tips.
Can you get me something to eat?
Oh, you're going to want this one, aren't you? This is one of your favorite meals.
So I don't want the mushrooms.
Excellent.
Can I try some?
Set it down there. This is super hot. Careful, very hot. Good, right? And easy. Alright? Ready? We'll fix our plates and we'll eat. Alright, until we see you next time, guys. Enjoy your food. Ciao. Good stuff, huh?
Le belle turbando a riposo, ma ci setto ad un cibo d'amor. Delle belle turbando a riposo, ma ci setto ad un cibo d'amor.